All right, welcome to another video of Freedom and Survival. In this video, I want to talk to you about what you can do to prepare, but I'm putting it in the form of a question. And the question is, are you actually preparing, and what are you doing to prepare, and what can you do to prepare? I've given you just 4 short reasons to prepare for the future, and these are actually non-spiritual. These are all the physical. We're all talking about the physical here. And so when it comes down to preparing, the question is, what exactly is your reasoning, and what are you doing to prepare? And I'm not the only one who thinks like this, and I'm going to start giving you some reasons from other sources as to why you might want to consider to getting your house in order. Let's just for a moment take a listen to this individual. Her name is Whitney Webb. I don't know her. I don't know her from Adam, but I really do appreciate this individual. She knows how to investigate. She knows investigative journalism, and she gets to the bottom of things. And she is, from what I can tell, not very biased, but she really does dig into the root of the issues. She follows the money. She follows the chains. She follows where people work and don't work, and where they've gone on to work from previous work, and ties it all together. And I'll tell you what, she does an awesome job. So just, if you don't mind, she's going to give us a few reasons why you might need to think about getting things rolling here.
Pretty clear that whoever is the next president is going to have to deal with some sort of U.S. government debt crisis, and I'm concerned about how that response is going to be regardless of which candidate wins. So, for example, Trump, in his case, when there was a major economic crisis in the form of, what happened economically as a result of lockdown policy and because of COVID-19, the person that he and his administration reached out to was Larry Fink of BlackRock, who implemented something we can get into later that some...
Okay, just so you know, Larry Fink is a name, or BlackRock is a name that comes up a lot. And I do mean a lot. So just keep that in the back of your hat as you go with me down this little journey. And then I'm going to get into what I showed you on the title slide about preparing. And we're just going to kind of talk one-to-one, if you don't mind. So let's listen to what she's got, what she's saying, and then we'll just go ahead and move on.
Researchers have called the Going Direct Reset, which was basically a way to put money from QE directly in the hands of the private sector instead of public entities, sort of like it had been done before. And arguably that resulted in a massive wealth transfer, and BlackRock didn't really use that money to help Main Street at all. They used it to buy shares in their own ETFs, among other things. And then Kamala, in her case, her entire economic team is essentially led by former BlackRock executives, and that was also true for the Biden administration. So essentially BlackRock, which was also played a major role in sort of developing the bailouts in the 2008 economic crisis, which was under Obama, right, will likely be developing the response for whatever this, coming economic crisis is, regardless of who gets in office. If we look at, the policy actions of the people running who they turn to in a time of crisis, or who is running their economic team, that seems increasingly likely. So that is why I'm very concerned, I guess I would say, about BlackRock in particular, because they seem to be the people that the government turns to regardless of whether a Democrat or a Republican is in office. And, they have sort of a history of really affecting wealth transfers during these crises at a time when, they're supposedly developing or helping develop policy meant to bail out Main Street. They end up sort of affecting massive bailouts for Wall Streets, and of course the people that BlackRock are trying to generate profits for ultimately. And the other thing that I'm really concerned about as it relates to, a coming economic crisis is that I think we're going to see a major effort to saddle American consumers with programmable, surveillable money and seizable money. And so, of course, a lot of people for years now have been very concerned about central bank digital currencies or CBDCs, but there are also things issued by the private sector, like stable coins, for example, that are just as programmable and surveillable and seizable as CBDCs are. So I think it's very likely in the event of a major debt crisis or some sort of crisis that damages significantly regular Americans' purchasing power, there will be an effort to onboard Americans onto one of those two versions of programmable, surveillable money. So it's possible.
So let's talk about that. That is one aspect of what I am going to focus on, when it comes to preparing yourself for what is to come. I also think that is going to lead into, now you follow my thinking here. You've got what she's talking about. She's missing a few things. Number one is BlackRock is extremely closely tied to Bank of America and Merrill Lynch by the people that they have hired and who they came out of. So keep that in mind when you are thinking about who is lining up not only artificial intelligence, but Bitcoin and blockchain types of digital currencies, what their policies are going to be, and where it is going to lead. Not only in a transfer of wealth from us to them, but also in a control mechanism. And that is something that you really need to stop and think about. In other words, when they come down to it and they control it through Bitcoin and the blockchain, and it comes down to the point where you can neither buy or sell or eat unless you subscribe to their mechanism of trade and track. That is tracking you in everything you do. If you do not subscribe, where does that lead to? And I know a lot of you think you're not going to be here, but you need to read the scriptures. You need to read Matthew 24, 25, 1 Corinthians 15, 50 and 51. And you need to read 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Now, in the meantime, the Lord says we are to tarry. We're good. We are supposed to be here and do what we do, what we're called to do, who we're called to be. We are here for such a time as this. But he never, ever said, just let go and let God. He said, yield yourself as an instrument of righteousness. He said, faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. He says, if you're going to be faithful in me, if you have faith in me, you're going to do what I tell you to do. And that's why I'm going to do a Bible study on Nehemiah chapter 4, among other things, here in the near future. There's a lot in that we're going to take a look at. The other thing that you need to take a look at when it comes to this transfer of wealth and this new economy that we're looking at, and I have told you and told you and told you, you need to reinvent yourself and you need to figure out how you're going to make a sustainable living or survival, hopefully thrival instead of survival, in the coming economic shifts. And I'm going to get into that in just a little bit. And I'm preaching the choir. If you're on board, if you already know what's going on, then I don't really have to talk to you. You already know. And what I'm going to say here isn't necessarily for those of you who are well down the road and seasoned, or what have you. This is for those of you who need a little kick in the rear end to get off your duff and do what you need to do. Because laziness is sin. And deafness and ignorance is not bliss. Willful ignorance is not bliss. And God does not give you an excuse for it. He just doesn't. There's nowhere you can show me that he does. As a matter of fact, he says, if you lack wisdom, ask of him and he'll give to you liberally. He doesn't say stick your head in the sand. Though in Job, that's referenced when it comes to the ostrich who sticks her head in the sand and does not protect her eggs. So with this thing here that Whitney's talking about, that's one of the aspects. And as she said, and this is something you need to recognize, when it comes to the policies in particularly in the United States of America, you need to quit trusting in a man and in a political party. Period. You don't trust any of them. Do not trust any of them. It is very dangerous to trust men. This is what, and I, look, here's another one. And I'm not saying that these people are the end all. That's not what I'm saying. But just listen to what they say from time to time.
I don't trust anybody anymore. But I will tell you, we have no country left. Let's just give you some of the headlines from today. Harris calls for higher taxes on investment income. Now, what is that going to do, Stu? Just noodle this with me. She's giving more taxes on investment income. What do you think that is?
Some would say,
what would that do?
When you tax something, you discourage it. So, if you're taxing investments, you're discouraging investments in American companies.
Yeah, but she says she's only going to be taxing people who have $1 million or more.
Okay, let's talk about that for just a moment. $1 million or more. First of all, $1 million is still a lot of money, but it is not what it was 20, 30, and 40 years ago. And it certainly isn't what it was when I was growing up. Which means, pure and simple, if $1 million wasn't what it was back then, I'm just having a hard time hearing my mic. If $1 million isn't now what it was back then, what does that mean for the money you make? And unless you own everything that you have free and clear as a consumer, same thing with me, as a consumer and as an investor, but primarily as a consumer, if you don't own everything that you have as a consumer, then that means your money goes not as far as it ever did in the past. Simply put. So, once again, all of these policies are affecting all of us, not just who they claim, as usual, not who they claim they're going to affect.
She can say that all she wants. She's lying, though.
Yeah, I know, but she's also, just so you know, she's only going after the people who have money to invest. She's not going to go after the poor people on the investment thing. So,
good. Really? She's not going to hit the people with massive debt with no income on their massive 401ks?
Right. No, they're not going to. Great story about workers feeling Bidenomics pain as job creators fear the worst for Kamala. And this is what's happening. If you think your employer is going to be like, you know what, I'm going to add jobs. If Kamala gets in, you're out of your mind. They are all going to batten down the hatches. By the way, job openings fell more than expected in July, which is, what does that even mean? U.S. steel shares plunge as Biden-Harris prepare to block Nippon Steel takeover. People familiar with the matter told the Washington Post that President Joe Biden is preparing to announce that he will block the $14.9 billion deal. U.S. shares have fallen now 41% this year. Kamala Harris, the presidential...
Okay, that's all the further we need to go with that particular clip. We know that for the past half a decade at least, actually going back to before... that C word with a dash 18 and 19 behind it, that companies have been laying off. I mean, big companies have been laying off massive amounts of employees to the tunes of hundreds and thousands. And that is not an exaggeration. This happens in every economic downturn, in every economic shift, and it also happens and coincides with not only new innovations, usually, which are a good thing, but it coincides with people losing their shirts, losing their minds, and a big, massive transfer of wealth. Question: what are you doing to prepare? The wise man sees trouble coming from afar, and he prepares and is saved. The fool turns his back and is destroyed. What are you doing to prepare? So that's kind of the economic side of things.
Because they seem to be the people that the government...
Let's talk about, for now, let's talk about catastrophic events and civil unrest. Let's go ahead and talk about those types of things. Now, how many of you have been watching the news for the past week and have been privy to this whole idea of some Venezuela illegal immigrant gang members taking over apartment complexes in Aurora, Colorado? Now, I just did a video on that. The audio sucks, so I'm going to delete it, and I'm going to redo that video. But we're going to just kind of hit that real quick here, for the reason of because it is something that is telling. Because it's not just Aurora, Colorado, but it is also Chicago and some reports of New York City. So let's take a look at that for just a moment. I've got a few things up here that I did from the last video that was a bomb. If you look at the Google search for 911 calls due to these Venezuelans, it says an audio clip of just the search headline. Audio clip of a 911 call has gone viral, allegedly that Venezuelan gangs took over an apartment complex in Chicago. Police chief says Colorado apartments are not being taken over by Venezuelan gang despite the viral images. Okay, so we have a situation here, and let me just show you some more. And disturbing 911 dispatch calls from apartment takeover. 32 Venezuelans. Oh, this stuff drives me nuts. 32 Venezuelans are trespassing in a building. Disturbing 911 dispatch calls concerning the apparent takeover of an American apartment complex by foreign nationals have been released. So there are 911 calls. They've been released. There is the mayor of Aurora has acknowledged that something's going on, but he's flippy-floppy like a fish out of water. I'm going to talk about that. And here it says Chicago Police in Zone 7, District 3 dispatch had the same things, 911 calls. And here it gives the address. My point is there are specifics to these stories. Keep that in mind. Whenever there's a story and people are denying it, there are going to be specifics to back up some claims. And this is what you need to keep your eye on. So American Military News reports the same thing. Audio recording. Now, an audio recording from a 911 dispatch on call Monday night reveals an armed group of 32 Venezuelan nationals reportedly took control of the Chicago building. Okay? So Chicago, Aurora. Let's go back to Aurora for just a moment. There's something else that's very interesting with this. Now we're also seeing, authorities debunk the right-wing claims of right-wing claims. Keep that in mind. Migrant takeover in California, Colorado, and Illinois. And this little dude he's being paid to do this, let me tell you. In Monday, Aurora authorities reject the claims that an armed gang has taken an... Wish it would just quit shifting on me. Complex in the Colorado City, with speculation being that the men were part of Venezuela-born gang. But if you listen to the interviews, there's something to it. You just need to listen to the interviews. I got to find that clip. Maybe it helps if I turn my audio up here. All right, this isn't going to help me. Let's see what we got here. Every time I switch a tab, it keeps resetting itself. All right, let's do this one. And now it's loading an ad. Oh, this stuff drives me nuts.
The now viral video reportedly shows members of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, recorded on a camera by neighbors who have since moved out of the building.
They have shoved their way into apartments. They have changed locks on residents, locks to the units and locks to the exterior entrances in the building. They have been living in absolute terror.
In a Facebook post, the mayor of Aurora, Colorado says he's now working to clear the entire building, declaring the property a criminal nuisance, adding the best course of action is to shut the building down, as local police have also intervened.
We're out here, we want to reassure the people that live in this community that we are actively investigating criminal activity that's happening and listening to them so that we can learn anything that we're missing.
As local leaders debate the best course of action in this small Denver suburb, other cities are also dealing with the large influx of migrants who have come to the border in the last few years. Though the numbers have dramatically dropped in the last few months, local issues have seeped into national...
So the numbers have dropped coming across the border in the last few months. How interesting can that be? Let me tell you, I don't know as I believe him on that count either. Of course, when I cover this specifically, it is going to be this. This is what I'm going to talk about, just so you know. And we're going to get into this particular situation right here in specifics. But the point of the matter is, these things are being widespread. And you have all of that, what you just heard. There are interviews of the mayor of Aurora, Colorado, and the council member that they're pinning all this stuff on as conspiratorial, and that it is a figment of her imagination. She is being framed just like the little commies do when they find that their hand has been caught in a cookie jar. So, my question to you again is simply this. When it comes to catastrophic events, and when it comes to civil unrest, when it comes to massive civil unrest, what are you doing to prepare? What can you do to prepare? Okay? We're going to get into that. How about when it comes to grid down and power outages? What about when it comes down to food shortages? What are you doing to prepare? I've heard so many people say one of three things. Either I'm ready, four things. I'm either ready, getting ready, or, what? Hold on. Or, I'm going to come to your place, or I'm just going to trust God. And there's only two of those answers that are correct answers. Let me get rid of that screen behind me. It's driving me nuts. I was checking something out and I forgot I left that there. So let's talk about what you can do to prepare. Let's talk about the first thing, and that is catastrophic events and or civil unrest that comes to your area. Before we do, we need to understand a couple of very basic fundamentals. And the fundamental thing is simply this. When you are preparing, there are basics that must be covered right away. And that is individually, food, water, shelter, and self-defense. Now, beyond that, when we take a look at the economic aspects of what we're talking about, it would also behoove you to prepare for the ability to trade time or some kind of money or whatever, barter for necessities. Right? Food. What are you doing to prepare your food? There are some things that you can do. You can simply stock up. You can stock up on canned goods, dried goods, rice, wheat, flour. You can baking things, and you can stock up. So with food, you simply go out and you buy things that last. They're packaged well. They're going to last for a while. Canned goods. Rice. And things that you eat. Now, beyond that, what else can you do? You can begin to learn to grow your own food. Yes, it's time consuming. You're going to have to do a lot of learning. You need to do a lot of reading. You need to do a lot of watching YouTube on gardening. But the thing of it is, if it gets down to it and you can't go somewhere because you don't have the fuel, your vehicle will be targeted by both rednecks, gangs, and the law, because everything's all out of kilter, if the law is even going to exist. As we see in the Aurora thing anyways, the police were there, but they're denying any allegations of any kind that there's anything going on, even though cameras saw stuff going on. And then the police chief says that we're containing the situation and we can't have this and blah, 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 and then totally denies it. And then there's a council member involved, but yet, so we don't know where, when things get really, really bad, where these badges are going to be. Some of them are going to go home and just take care of themselves. Some of them are going to be freelance for hire, and it's going to get ugly. But you can learn to grow food. You can learn to can. You can learn to garden. You can learn to garden in box gardens and in raised beds. You can learn to just do all kinds of growing things. And by the way, when we made our move, that's what I began to do. I'm telling you, I'm practicing what I'm preaching. And I did the video on the economics. I talked to you about how I'm reinventing myself, and I'm not done with that either. So, but I'm methodically moving myself in the direction for these things. I want to know what I eat. I want to know where it comes from. I want to be able to create my own food source. And nobody's going to tell me I can't do it. Or we're going to have, no. So there's that. What are you going to do with water? Now, also, I might say, let me go back to the food thing. When it comes to prepping as an individual, you need to prep for home, and you also need to prep for when you are in transit. So, because you don't know when and where and what anything's going to happen. You just don't. You might be at work and need to get home. You might be visiting family halfway across the country, 10 hours across the country, 20 hours across, whatever it is. You might be in transit. And so you need to consider, no matter at this point on, from this point on, you need to consider what you're going to do to cover food, water, shelter, by the way, heat in the wintertime. So you need to understand that wherever you are, wherever you're going, you need to know what seasons you're going to get into. Calculate how long it's going to take you to get home if you get separated from your vehicle and you cannot traverse the roads. And you need to take care of self-defense. And yes, that is a biblical concept. Let me see if I can get this thing changed out here to a new thing. So when it comes to, let's say, being in your individual self and you're covering all these things, obviously your home is your shelter. Your home is going to provide your heat, your cool, your storage. It's going to provide some level of protection. But when you're in transit, you need to have a way to be able to carry food. And you need to have food that is in keeping with high protein, high calorie burn if you're on foot. And you also need to consider your dietary needs based on allergies and diseases. You need to consider all that. You need to consider water. How are you going to get water? Don't assume the public water system is going to be there. And don't assume the next person a half a mile down the road is going to allow you onto their property to get water out of a spigot that may or may not work. You don't assume anything. Now to start, Walmart and probably Dick's and Cabela's and Pro Bass and all those, sells what's called a Sawyer water filter from $20 to $35. Different variations, same thing. And you need to consider what you're going to do to carry your water. Nalgene bottle, sports bottle, canteen. I like this stainless steel canteen, the Stanley canteen that fits in my military canteen pouch. I don't like plastic. I like the stainless steel. And I have several Sawyer water filters, and I have them layered, so that if I lose one part of my gear, I still can get water and still drink and still cook. And that brings me to another point. If you are considering a water filter, a life straw is great if you want to stick your head in the puddle or stick your head in the stream and suck water from a straw. It doesn't do you any good when it comes to mixing it with food or cooking. It's not going to do you any good. So you need to plan for getting water and filtering it, purifying it, not just to drink, but for food, and maybe for cleaning up as well. Maybe cleaning wounds, whatever it is, you got to get the bugs out of it. And the Sawyer is good for that. Now, you also need to plan on getting rid of organics. So you need to learn how to filter water naturally, or you need to carry something. What do I have? I don't have the MSR. You look at an MSR filter, and you get an MSR filter that cleans out organics. You get the cleanest water you can, and you start with that. You can rough filter it out, but you clean out the organics. Why? Because water runoff in this country is so contaminated with not only stuff off the highways and the roads, because it's washing off the roads, but also the farm fields with all of the synthetic fertilizers that are man-made that produce volumes and volumes and volumes of fluoride and all kinds of other derivatives that get run off the road and down into the streams, down into the rivers, down where you might filter your water. So while a Sawyer water filter is good in the clearest of situations, if you are downstream from any of that, you want to be able to get the organics out of the water. Pay mind to what you're getting in the water. Let's talk about shelter on a personal level for a moment. In the summer, obviously, you need to shelter yourself from sun. You need to shelter yourself from insects, and you need to shelter yourself possibly from rain, possibly from heat, chilliness, and other people. Keep that in mind. If you are a long ways from home and that's where you're going, or you're heading to a bug out location, that is a separate location from your dwelling, that is already pre-stacked, you need to consider these things. Heat, fire, some kind of stove. If we're in a collapsed society type of thing, a fire is going to give you away. Light is going to give you away. You need to find another way to warm up clothes and things like that. Figure it out. You got a lot of if you're at this point, you got a lot of homework to do, and you better get on it. Likewise, self-defense. If it's down, you need to be ready for combat. If you're traveling, you need to be ready to defend yourself in your domicile that is on your four wheels. And you need to maintain laws as much as you possibly can. But when things go south, your first priority is to protect your loved ones and stay alive to do so. That's Nehemiah 4. That's Luke 22, when Jesus instructed the disciples, sell your coats and go buy a sword. So, also with these things, you need a way to cook, you need a way to cook food, and you need a way to, how do I say it? You need to be able to, you need to have a good folding knife, and you need to have a good straight blade knife. That's just a single shank knife. and get the best steel you can get your hands on. Don't get junk steel. You need to get a knife that is going to hold an edge over and over and over again, and then you need to have a way to sharpen it. Now, going from the personal level into what would be more of a family level in your home, considering that you either have family or family that will come to you, you need to basically cover the same things. And you need to do it in a way that makes sense on a far larger scale. Again, storing food, possibly storing water, having a way to filter water, getting water out of the ground when the electric goes off, having a way to produce electricity if you think it's going to be necessary, having alternatives to light and heat when the grid goes down. Communication, have a way to communicate when communication as we know it today does not exist or is extremely controlled, and if you do communicate, you're going to tell everybody where you are. You need to learn to deal with it and to figure out how you're going to communicate. Think about how radios that are using subcarriers on the cell systems and stay away from them. Likewise, when it comes to communicating, you need to keep yourself quiet. Use your communication devices to listen more than you talk. In other words, your communication devices should be intel gathering before they're anything else. 10 seconds after you key up a radio, people can start foxing you out. Might take them a little bit, depending on how good they are. But a signal's a signal, and you need to keep that in mind. The strength of the signal, the cleansiness of the signal, and all of our new modern devices have digital signatures. Keep that in mind as well. You need to have ways of maintaining your food stock. Like I said, grow your food. Create a greenhouse. Learn how to use that greenhouse even during the cold spells and during the cold winter. Learn how to grow your own food. Learn how to store it. Canning, freezing, things like that. Dehydrating. Those are my three favorite. I like to dehydrate because it will last forever. I like to can because if the freezer goes down, I'm not losing what is canned. I like to freeze because it seems like it's the freshest, but it does lend itself to susceptibility to the electricity going out. So you have to keep all these things in mind. Self-defense. Learn how to be aware of your surroundings. I particularly am not good at hearing. I've got a bad ear. But one thing I'm good at is hearing things that are out of place, things that don't belong. So if I'm in a crowd and it's just all mush and I'm not hearing frequencies, if something is off, that I pick up on. And you need to learn how to do that with your ears and your eyes. And sometimes the touch. If things in the air are not what they should be to your skin, you need to understand what's going on. You need to learn these things. So, first of all, you need to be very have a certain levels of situational awareness. So at all times, you need to be situationally aware in proximity and on an outer band. And the further away you go from your home base of safety, the higher those levels ought to go. The more sensitive you ought to be at a closer range. You're still maintaining that closeness to farther out, almost like a ripple in a pond when you drop a rock or something into a pond. You've got your areas of sensitivity and awareness. The closer those things are that may be a threat, the higher your self-defense and your posture becomes. And you either know your way out, you have an exfil out, or you know how you're going to defend yourself and or the people around you. You need to start thinking like this. If you're driving, figure out where your bottlenecks are going to be. Figure out where people might purposefully block the road and why. Are they going to come up and loot everybody in the line? Are they going to rape and pillage? Figure it out. Learn. When it comes to your home area, you need to know your neighbors. You need to know your family. You need to know who you're working with, and you need to know who you're not working with. You need to know these things. You need to know which neighbors are of like mind, and you need to know which neighbors are lazy. You don't want to tie yourself to lazy individuals. You don't want to tie yourself to wimps. You don't want to tie yourself to people that can't take a stand for nothing. I don't care what label they are. These are things you can do to get ready. Growing food. I already alluded to it. In certain areas, you may not have the best location, but learn how to do it in such a way that it's aesthetically pleasing, number one, and number two, that it's as much out of sight as possible. Number three, somewhat defensible so that people can't just walk in and steal your food when it's ripe. If you can, get out of the cities, get into areas where you can have at least chickens and goats and sheep and small things that will keep you possibly sustained when you can't get to the store and buy your 20-ounce steak or your 50 pounds of fish or whatever it is. Get yourself to a place where you don't have to deal with people stealing your food. We moved so that we can control our environment to the best of our ability in many regards, or work with people that can secure that as well. If you don't think that this country is heading for a hurt, then you simply are not paying attention. Or you're listening to a bunch of lying buffoons at that. And I'm not saying that any one particular party or side or anything else is the sole culprit or perpetrators for agenda-driven nonsense, because it simply would not be true. But you need to learn to gather intel, and you need to learn to figure out who you're going to listen to and who you're not, for the reasons that I just stated. Because just because somebody might be liberal and you slide to the liberal side doesn't mean they're going to tell you the truth. They're just telling you what you want to hear. And the same thing is true for the conservative side. Unless somebody has the integrity on either side to speak the truth unbiasedly, you are subject for a bias-driven, agenda-driven information download. And that will not help you. Oh, let's see. What else can we look at? Oh. Grid down, power outages. Let's talk about the grid down for a moment. We kind of talked about the communication side of it. What are you going to do when you don't have electricity and regardless of how you heat, what are you going to do for heat if you can't run a fan to distribute the heat? Unless you're running just a plain old wood stove like we did in the old days. Well, some of us still do, which is really awesome. But what are you going to do for heat? For instance, at the other place that we lived, we actually had a coal stove, which was amazing heat. But it takes an electrical current to run the fan to blow the heat throughout the house. When we got the electric was out during the winter, I already had stuff in place where I could run my refrigerator, run our freezer, and run the fan for our heat. Do you have enough solar to crank your house? Do you have enough solar to run your refrigerator, your freezer, an electric range? If you have an electric range, your AC unit or your stovetop? Do you have enough power, backup power, to do that? And how long will that power be sustainable? Think about the sustainability of power, not just the power itself. Let me give you a little hint. I've been looking at, and I'm not saying that this is the end all. But this is something I'm looking at for a couple of reasons. Number one, it is sustainable for at least 15 years. It is easy to install and operate. It requires no fuel. And this company actually has customer service. And I am not sponsored by them. I just run into this the other day, and this is what I'm looking at. Being able to hook into your house's electricity and run your house off of solar powered. Well, it can be charged by generator, it can be charged by solar power and the grid. But when the grid goes down, obviously, then it can be renewed by solar and other means of charging. And so these are things you need to consider. I'm really looking at this right here. I'm looking at this really, really hard. Because everything else falls short of the sustainable solutions, as well as their closest competitor is direct order from overseas, and they don't have any customer service in the States. Well, I was really strongly looking at that company too. That's not going to happen. So you need to consider how you're going to run your sustainables in your home for the easiest, best, and longest period of time. We've talked about food, grid down, power outages, economic collapse, and catastrophic events. Let me talk to you just a little bit about massive national emergency level, catastrophic, global, but local events. And specifically on my personal thoughts, in addition to what I said about defending yourself and your family. Number one, we as civilians do not get military grade stuff. And just because it says it's military grade does not mean it's the best. Generally speaking, hunting rifles are really, really good. Modern hunting rifles that are computerized, precisely designed are really, really good. But self-defense items that are patterned after the military stuff generally is really, really, really good. Now, a lot of times the military grade thing has as much to do with the ability to function and operate, though those who come out of the M16 era would venture to disagree with me. I personally never ever had my M16 jam on me. And I don't recall my AR patterns jamming on me either. But you need to get a patterned firearm like that, as well as shotgun, handguns. And mostly that can take multiple magazines so that you're not shoving ammo in like this. You are just swapping out mags. And then for the same things, you need to consider what is going to be, number one, NATO, so that no matter who's running around, there's stuff to be picked up off the ground, whether it's law enforcement, your neighbors, military, or whoever. You can pick up their mags, shove them into your military patterned item, and rock and roll. Same thing is true with your handgun. And then you need to get something that actually fits like it belongs to you. And thirdly, you need to get something that is going to be very, very plentiful when you wind up needing parts or whatever. You need to keep these things in mind. And like I said before, when it comes to a straight blade, sharp implement, you need the best steel that you can get. And then, last but not least, you need to be trained. You need to have the mindset to do what you need to do, and you need to have the mind and the muscle memory to actually do what you need to do. You need to be trained. And I don't mean video games. Video games might help you familiarize yourself with the functionality as well as a few other things, but you really do need to be trained. And you need to know what you're using. It needs to be a part of you. The other thing I might add is that while you're doing all this, you need to maintain a level of normalcy so that you're not sticking out like a sore thumb. You are functioning, you are living, you are occupying your domain. You are a part of society that upholds good, moral, integral structure, and you need to be a part of the answer and solution and not a part of the problem. And don't let the wrong people dictate to you as to what those things are, or you will find yourself a slave. So I don't know if there's anything else that y'all can add to that little basic list, but if you're not on it, you need to get on it. Things are rolling much faster than they have been in the past, well, since 2010. It's just getting so fast you can't even keep up with it. All right, so with that, I will simply sign off. or not. Oops, that is not the right thing. I do want to say that if this struck a chord, just hit like and subscribe if you don't mind. I'm going to be doing a lot of other things. I'm working on a video right now about what I'm doing to get a greenhouse up. And so not only will I do these live videos that I'm doing now, but I'm going to be uploading the process of what I told you I'm doing. I'm going to be uploading the process of that along the way. And we've got that ball rolling right now, where we just did some more video footage this week. And we are going to, if you want to come along, we're going to post that journey of what we're doing here to get ourselves ready. On the same token, if you don't mind, like I tell you on every video, if you don't mind, check out my Etsy shop. I have landscape photographs that I put on coffee mugs, tempered cutting glasses, jigsaw puzzles, cell phone holders, clocks, and different things like that. I'm working on another line of items. It might take me a while, but I'm getting ready, or I'm planning on, I should say, to produce some of my own products, which is another thing that I should have mentioned in the economic side real quick. When you're planning in restructuring your life economically, you need to plan, somehow to make money digitally online, as well as in the marketplace, and as well locally, and as well as bartering. Just keep that in mind. I forgot to mention that I was going to, and I forgot. So with that, thank you for joining me, and I will see you in the next video.